Welcome to the Defense and Aerospace Report. I'm Vago Muradian here in sunny Orlando, Florida for the Air Force Association's annual Air Warfare Symposium. Topic this year is Command and Control and Fusion Warfare. Our coverage here is sponsored by DRS Technologies, and we're honored to have with us an airman who wears three hats, General Todd Wolters, who is the commander of U.S. Air Forces Europe, the commander of U.S. Air Forces Africa, as well as top air commander in NATO. Sir, thanks for joining. 5,002 flight hours now in a range of airplanes, including one of the coolest ever, the OV-10.
Thanks, Vago. You're absolutely, positively right. And again, thanks for the opportunity to talk about our favorite resource and our favorite topic, our airmen.
Well, let's start. First, you also have a powerful diplomatic role. You took the job in August 2016. I saw you at an air power conference in Sweden where we had a couple of interesting conversations, and you gave a presentation there. Obviously, you have a key diplomatic role as well, not just as a combat commander, but as the person who marshals the air forces of 28 nations, and then more than a dozen partner nations, and then dozens other nations that you interact with, and U.S. forces and European forces interact with. There have been some concerns about President Trump's commitment to the NATO alliance. Obviously, he said some positive things of Vice President Pence, Jim Mattis, Rex Tillerson were over in Europe driving that message home at the Verkunda conference, which was obviously important to you as well. Are nations reassured, or is there still a little bit of concern from your standpoint, and is that impacting at all military cooperation?
Vago, in the 6 months of service that I've had wearing my NATO hat, the cooperation amongst our NATO partners has never been higher than it is right now.
So not an impact at all?
Not an impact at all.
Let me take you then to what the big challenge obviously is Russia. The whole European Reassurance Initiative was driven by that. Obviously nations on the border particularly concerned, but also nations like the UK and others that have had incursions in their airspace as well. Norwegians have faced that challenge. Swedes are seeing it as well. And obviously I want to talk to you a little bit about the February 10 incident the last time where there were multiple sort of Russian close contacts, let's put it that way, with NATO assets. What, as a professional airman who is a Cold Warrior as well, so you were flying OV-10s in Europe in support of the Armored Cavalry Regiment, 11th ACR, right?
Correct.
11th ACR. I was testing my Cold War memory there for a bit. What are some of the things that you've seen that the Russians have done? Obviously, Ukraine was an eye-opening experience, but what are some of the other capabilities that they're working on? Obviously, a deployment of a new cruise missile, the demonstration of the Caliber, long-range Caliber strikes from the Caspian Sea to show that they too have a reach-out and touchy capability they used in Syria. What are some of the things that you're seeing that keep you awake at night and keep you focused?
The increase in exercises and the greater focus that the Russians have demonstrated in their exercises, and I actually look at those, Vago, as almost a compliment towards our NATO forces and our U.S. forces, because we have been doing the same from our standpoint. ERI has afforded us the opportunity to rotate more forces in, to increase our exercise rate, to increase the number of training events, to increase the interoperability between functions and domains, and it allows us the opportunity to work on our command and control and command and feedback.
Is there, one of the things Phil Breedlove, former SACEUR, mentioned, obviously another senior airman, talked about was, obviously exercises, you're 30% up from 15 to 16, another 30% up. But his question was, he said, look, in Europe we have a lot of capability, tremendous capability. The question is a shortage of capacity. What are some of the things that you're doing, partner nations are doing, and things you're doing innovatively to augment that delivery of capacity, whether it's forward-basing aircraft? You spoke to reporters a minute ago, you mentioned bombers. Fairford would make a very, very nice home for bombers and has served as a forward base for us. But what are some of the capabilities that need to go into the region, and how to think differently about capability to deliver the kind of effects we're looking at?
Vago, the AFA symposium that we're having here that references command and control and fusion are the precise areas that we are focusing on and improving in the European region. We have wonderful ops centers, one in the north in Udom, Germany, one in the south in Madrid at Torrejon Air Base, and one at Ramstein Air Base. And our goal is to make sure that from a command and control perspective, we can fuse as many of the variables as possible in all domains, in all functions, to ensure that all of us can be at the right place at the right time with an exact understanding of where all of our resources are.
Is there a challenge from your standpoint that we are moving back into a kind of a much more Cold War mindset in some respects? Russians can reach out, hold our bases at risk. That's something that we haven't seen for a long time. That's something that you had to worry about as an airman who served in Europe for a long time, including at the peak of the Cold War. What are some, is the alliance, are you seeing the kind of necessary shift in urgency, need for distributed operations, the fact that some of the command and control links that we depend on will be disrupted through electronic and electromagnetic means?
Well, first of all, Vago, I don't see this as a Cold War issue. I don't see this as a reemergence of Cold War tactics, techniques, and procedures. What I see is there's a challenge in the region off to the east. We have great capability. We need to improve our capability, and the best way to do that is to exercise and train like there's no tomorrow, and force our folks to work as hard as they possibly can to be ready, willing, and able to support if called upon.
There were 3.5 incidents on February 10. You mentioned that's the last time that there was a close call between NATO assets and Russian assets. But one of the things you said that was interesting was how each of them is different in terms of how they're probing and how they're using that capability. What is it that they're doing? What are the lessons you're drawing from that? And how is that driving how you're responding in the future?
Well, first of all, February 10th, there were 4 unprofessional behaviors by Russian aerospace aircraft. We examine those incidents on a day-by-day basis. We track those on a monthly basis, weekly basis, quarterly basis, half basis. The trending is plateaued. We viewed all 4 of those incidents as unprofessional. The differences between the incidents had to do with the speed of closure and the final distance that separated the 2 airframes once the unprofessional act was complete.
Was it unsafe from, because 3 of those were Su-24s, one of them was an IL-38, I think.
Correct.
From a professional airman standpoint, was that unprofessional conduct on part of the Russians?
It was errors in judgment and unprofessional on behalf of the Russian aviators.
But it was done to message us, correct? And if so, did they deliver any message that you understood?
I can't speak for the minds of those aviators inside of the aerospace vehicles, but those were unprofessional actions.
Let me ask you about Africa. Obviously, resources are tight, but that's a massive continent. Obviously, a lot of significant operations that are going there that you're supporting as well, and U.S. forces are supporting and coalition forces are supporting. When it comes to apportioning resources, how do you try to work this? Because if you look at it, you're pretty tight when it comes to Europe before you start to spill over and to support operations in what still appears to be a pretty vast continent.
We're always tight in resources, and we get paid to think. And what we do in situations like this is take a look at the strategic setting, ensure that the resources that we have can flex and do as many things as possible. And we have to take a look at what do we want the region to look like from a U.S. perspective and from a continent perspective, 1 year out, 2 years out, and 3 years out. So we have to put in place an ability to put eyeballs on, an ability to transfer resources, and ability to sustain logistics over the long haul. So all those go into considerations with respect to what we do in Africa. And the one thing that we have to do that we don't do in other regions is think about the vast distance that has to be covered. So the resources that we'll put in place will be the kind of resources that are very good covering long distances in short periods of time.
Let me go back to Europe briefly before I let go of you, because you've got a very, very busy schedule here. When it comes to European-based assets, a lot of the, for example, when the Libya operation started, precision munitions, folks were running out of precision munitions. Spare parts became challenges. Everybody has been operating on a very lean mindset of just-in-time delivery until things start to surge, and then all of a sudden that system gets under pressure and starts to fail. Have the nations done, and even the United States done enough to have those kind of assets forward, to have those stockpiles ready, so that in the event of a scrape, there's stuff to go right away? Because obviously any adversary worth their salt, what the Russians are doing is piling up a lot of munitions and a lot of revetments and a lot of bunkers to make sure that they're right close to the border to pose that challenge to us. What are we doing in terms of having that sustainability in the event of a potential conflict?
We're working every day to increase our flexibility and agility. The ability of speed in warfare is critical, and you have to be able to lift and shift forces at a pace that outguns your challengers. And we're doing that every second of the day in all domains and in all resource areas.
last question, F-35, obviously a very important capability. Numerous European nations, obviously UK, key partner on the program, but so is Norway, so is Turkey, so is Italy, so is the Netherlands. Obviously, you know, those nations already have some of those aircraft that are on runways now. They're getting ready. We're getting ready to do deployments. The Marines are obviously in Japan now. Talk to us a little bit about the capability that airplane is going to be bringing in Europe, because obviously it's a very expensive program. It does have a bit of a bullseye on its forehead. How many F-35s do you want, and how fast do you want them?
I want a lot, and I want them tomorrow. Vago, it's a game-changing capability. It affords a degree of access that we've never seen before, and we're excited for our NATO partners embracing that airframe, and we're very, very excited from a U.S. perspective to get that jet over to the region as fast as possible.
And do you think that that in and of itself will provide, it will add to U.S. deterrence?
It will certainly enhance our deterrence.
Last question, I lied a little bit. OV-10. Every time I talk to an OV-10 pilot, I have to say, very, very cool airplane. You know, how much was it as fun to fly as it looked like it was to fly?
Vago was even funner. I was afforded the opportunity to have 948 hours in the wonderful OV-10 Bronco, a fantastic resource.
Sir, thanks very much again. And you know, I suppose when you retire, you're going to get one of those and use that as your personal plane.
I might.
Sir, thanks very much.
Vago, thank you very much.
Cheers.
Cheers.